How's it going, you guys? This is Trent here to do another machine walk around with you. Now, last week we talked about Husqvarna's TE 150i. This week I wanted to talk about the TE 250i and what makes this an awesome option if you're looking for a bigger bore trail bike. Alright, so with this being the TE 250i, you've still got Husqvarna's fuel injection system. Now they have had the fuel injection system on their 250 and 300 models for a few more years than they had it on the 150 that we talked about last week. So with this extra development time, Husqvarna has done a great job of working out the kinks to make sure this thing is running at tip-top shape, regardless of elevation and regardless of temperature. Awesome running motor here. Now they do offer this bike in the 250 that I've got here and then also the 300. Now between those two bikes they share the exact same crank and crankcase. They share the exact same exhaust system. Where it differs is in cylinder bore size and piston size. With these two motors though, the power placement and the power delivery is very, very different. Now with 250 you get a little less low end grunt, a little less mid-range hit, but then you've got more top end. With this having a smaller piston, it tends to like to rev a little bit more. It's a little bit more playful feeling. Whereas the 300 has a lot more low end and mid-range grunt, it doesn't quite rev out like the smaller bore does. And so if you're looking for something that you still want to kind of ring out like a smaller bore, the 250 is an awesome power plant. Now with this fuel injection system, just like on that 150 that we talked about last week, you've got two injectors on this that are shooting it downwards into the transfer ports. You've also got your oil injection system. And so this oil injection system, along with the sensors that it comes with, are always changing your premix ratio to make sure that this is running super crisp and super clean. They say that this ranges in between about 50 and 100 to 1 ratio, which is pretty wild. Now you do get to put just straight gas in the gas tank, so you don't have to worry about that premix. So with this fuel injection system, you don't have to worry about premix, you don't have to worry about elevation, and you don't have to worry about temperature changes in how that this is going to make this motor perform. So awesome stuff right here. You do have Husqvarna's great chromoly chassis. You've got Husqvarna's carbon composite subframe to give you a little bit more of a flexy feel to this chassis to make it very compliant on the bumps. And then you've got the Explorer fork and the exact shock. Now this shock performance is great. They valved this suspension and set it up to handle the chop that you'll get on the trails and to just give you a great compliant ride. Now with this having the Explorer fork, if you notice, we talked about this last week. This is a coil spring fork, so you've got coil springs in both sides. It's an open cartridge fork, which is going to make it easier. It's a simpler design, so it's easier to service. And then you've got preload adjustability on the tops to put more or less preload on those springs. And then you've got rebound dampening in one fork, compression in the other. Very cool suspension setup. And again, Husqvarna really set this up to handle exactly the type of terrain that you're going to get on trail rides. So it's going to keep you more hooked up over rocks and logs and roots and on the chop and chatter that you're going to get on the trail, while still giving you a great soft ride. Now with this being in the TE line, Husqvarna throws some very cool things at this to make sure that it's ready for the trails. You've got a 6-speed gearbox in this TE. You've got a skid plate. You've got the Magera brakes, as opposed to the Brimbos that are on the TC or the TX line. And then you've also got the 18-inch wheel, you've got a kickstand, and you've got an O-ring chain. So this bike right off the bat is ready to go out and play in the woods. You also get a headlight and then a trail computer. Now this trail computer is going to show you speed, it's going to give you a trip, and it's going to give you a clock. Now right off this computer, you've also got a low premix oil light to let you know if you're needing to throw some oil in this thing. Now I wouldn't recommend relying on that. I would of course fill this thing up every time you go out on a ride or every other ride to make sure that you've got plenty of oil there for your premix system. Now with this 250 power plant, you've also got an ignition switch up here on the bars. So you've got two positions. You've got number 1 and you've got number 2. Number 1 is the full power mode. So this is going to give you all that this little 250's got to offer. Now if you jump it over into number 2, it's going to limit ignition timing just a little bit to give you a more tractable power, a little less power throughout the curve, to make it nice and easy for when you're in that slick riding area. So this is going to be an awesome tool to make sure that you're getting all of that power to the ground. Now with this TE250, you're coming in at 233 pounds without fuel. So considering that this is a full-on enduro bike, with the headlight, with the computer, with the bigger tank, with everything that this thing comes with, it's a very, very light bike, ready to be thrown around on the trails. Now this bike does come with Dunlop tires, but they're the AT81s front and rear. So they're going to be a great all-around trail tire. It's going to give you a good grip, but still give you lots of durability and puncture resistance when you're getting into the rocks. The TE250i is electric start. You notice no backup Kickstarter anymore. Electric start only, but with this being a light, easy to start two-stroke, she fires right up. I'll tell you, the majority of people, once they've ridden the 250 and the 300 back to back, a lot of them jump back on the 250.
So Husky models I have personally owned. I had a 2018 TE250i. I put about 90 hours on that bike, and then I swapped it out for a 2020 TX300. I've also owned a 2018 FE450, and I've had a 2018 and a 2019 TE150, and I now am back on a TE250i, which is my bike of choice. Overall, they both are excellent, awesome bikes that are really hard to beat, actually. That balanced motor has been phenomenal. They're both really smooth, but they are different animals, and that's kind of what I wanted to discuss. I've got over 100 hours total logged seat time on the 250, and then I've got about 40 hours on the newer 300, and I since have switched back to the 250, and that's why Trent wanted me to discuss this, just because that is definitely my bike of choice. The 250 is a little bit more lively when you're riding the pipe. It also lugs really well down low, which the 300 I feel like maybe does even a better job down low. But that 250 handles everything just fine as far as the slow, nasty, technical terrain. They idle really low, and they're almost hard to stall on these newer bikes. But the low end is exceptionally strong on the 250 still. That 300 in some spots can be a little bit harsh or kind of aggressive feeling, which for some riders might be a little intimidating. I liked the bike, but didn't feel like I needed everything that it had to offer on the bottom end. And I like the smooth, fast, flowy terrain also, which is why that 250 has been a better all-around bike for me. Here in Idaho, we're really privileged to live near both the sand dunes and the desert and some really gnarly mountain terrain within about a 15 or 20 minute drive in any direction. So that's why I've stuck with the 250 and why I would lean that way. Another difference I've noticed is the 250 runs slightly cooler than my 300 did. Maybe it was just my bike, I don't know for sure. But on my 300, on some of the same rides, I noticed it was getting pretty hot. And I ended up adding a radiator fan to that bike. Haven't done it to my 250s. But overall, they're both awesome bikes. I would recommend either bike to any rider, really. But as far as if I could only have one, I would definitely just stay with the 250 myself. The bottom end is really impressive. Top end is awesome. They just sing when you're riding the pipe on those bikes.
Husqvarna did an awesome job on this TE250i. If you're in the market for a new trail bike for this coming season, come and get hooked up with one of these awesome 250s. Thanks so much for watching these videos, and if you could, hit that subscribe button. We'd love to keep you up to date with all things Rexburg Motorsports. Thanks so much, and have a good day.